Button. All right, so we are on our last class here, last session of the Beginning Livestock series, and we are finishing it up with livestock auctions. So this is something that not often is like a common topic around here. It's much bigger in several different other parts of the state, but we have some that are actually pretty close and are a great option for new or beginning farmers or even established farmers to buy or sell livestock with and take advantage of kind of a built-in marketing as well. But we're going to go ahead and go through a bunch of different topics the best we can. And again, I'm Michelle Prosha. I'm with C.C. Sullivan County, and just want to make sure here that we have our slides going. And I do believe we do. So up first, just the basics of kind of what a livestock auction is. I'm going to go through a bunch of disadvantages, advantages, kind of from the buyer or the seller perspective. I have a video here, but I'm not going to play it today. But there are several examples of kind of local and regional auctions and how they kind of look, but they're all generally pretty similar. There's kind of like a staging area with auctioneers and then, seats available for folks to go through. But if you ever are in need of a little bit of excitement, go down to an auction. In addition, I also want to mention that with these auction places, sometimes it's not only for livestock. They have equipment such as like tractors, implements. They have different machinery. They have different tools and things that you can also auction or bid on, different things like that. So it's not only just livestock auction at these events. You'd be surprised with what they sell and auction off. So if you're looking for equipment or anything beyond animals, it's also a good idea to check out as well. So these videos will be available in the follow-up email that I'll have and I'll send out, so you can also see them, just what it all looks like, kind of the sights and sounds of it all. So like I said, I kind of was doing it on, as like a seller versus buyer perspective. So those are kind of the two options that you have as far as participating in an auction. So obviously, if you're the seller, you are, selling your animals through the auction house. If you're a buyer, you're buying them through the auction house. It kind of acts as a middleman, the auction house does, as far as ownership goes there. So what you have kind of advantages for your as a seller. One thing that's nice is that, there are frequent sales. They're usually scheduled out for, if not the next couple months, for the year. It's kind of a standing date. So you're able to sell your livestock through that sale barn at a nice increment. So it's not like you're waiting or overfeeding animals and losing money in that sense, that you can kind of get animals through. Another advantage is prompt payment. Usually that day you're presented with a check for whatever your animals have sold for. Another option is that the auctions don't set a ceiling for your bid, for the bids that come in for animals. So depending on how the market is going, or if people particularly like those animals that you were selling, if they want them really badly, the price that you receive for those animals, could be very well. Alternately, this would probably be one of the more disadvantaged. There usually isn't a bottom for price. There's maybe a minimum, or that's something that you can work out with the auction price or auction house, but you know, that could be a disadvantage. If you've ever been to an auction house, or even, you know, of any kind, whether it be livestock or you know, any you name it, anything. I've been to a couple you know, state sale ones, and they get pretty exciting. But um the whole idea of creating excitement and competitive bidding is an advantage for a seller, because folks can go back and forth and drive up the price. Usually with auction houses, um, as they act as a middleman, they do create market transparency. So you can kind of see from the week before or weeks before kind of what the prices are going for. If you look at their sales sheets, and you'll get an idea of what your animal could go for, you know, depending on the market that week. And another advantage, and I like this one, because if you've ever tried to sell an animal, sometimes there isn't a sense of urgency with someone who's purchasing the animal. You know, they're especially if they, you know, have to make an appointment with you to come to the farm, or are just kind of looking on any of the social media sites that you can find animals on, or buying websites, things like that. The advantage for the seller is that you have a group of people who are ready and willing to bid on animals, and are prepared to make a decision that day. And they purchase it, you know, through the auction house, and you end up with a check at the end of the day. So that kind of sense of urgency is really helpful to sellers. Couple disadvantages. This is more on the auction house, but an auction does require at least somebody to bid on your animal. You know what I mean? So so that is could be a disadvantage if no one does bid, you know, but that's usually not the case. Usually people go, and you see some motivated buyers who are about to purchase some animals. Depending on, again, the auction house, it can be difficult to build kind of excitement and competitive bidding, unless there are certain qualities that bidders are looking for in your animals. But, you know, you never know till you get into the auction house what type of environment you're going to be. Sometimes there are missed opportunities, as far as since there are standing dates at auction houses, that potential buyers might not be able to make it due to whatever the case may be. But so, you know, that can be a disadvantage. And a farm might have a no sale if, again, if there's such a reserve price on your animal, that you might have to go back home with the animal that you tried to sell that day. So those can be some disadvantages for sellers. As far as for buyers, if you're looking to purchase animals that day or bid on animals, you're definitely going to have a lot more variety, a lot more options, a lot more, you know, breeds and different, you know, pigs, chickens, cattle, depending on the auction house, of course, if they are multi-species, but you'll have a lot more variety and options than buying directly from an individual farm. You're able to see a ton of different animals at once. A lot of times, and this is an advantage, because you will be purchasing or bidding on animals in bulk, or what is known as lots, like a group of animals, you know, a pen of 5 or a pen of 10, 20, whatever the case may be. Depending on how big the auction house is, or what region it is in, you might see animals from a lot of different geographical locations. So that's always a nice thing to see different breeds from different areas. And of course, another advantage would be frequent sales. And of course, reasonable prices. So you always go to the auction hoping that you'll get a good deal on animals. And a lot of times you can. You just have to know the market and do your research ahead of time as far as figuring out what that sweet spot for you in terms of price per head or however else they're selling it is. Some disadvantages, of course, is sometimes you have to buy in lots or what we just explained as groups of animals. So depending on the size of your property or your budget, uh, it might not be feasible for you to purchase animals in lots depending on the size. Another disadvantage would be, or could be, the bidding price. It just might go out of your budget. So you have to keep an eye on that. Sometimes people who are more experienced in the auction setting or who are able to even, something as simple as understanding the auctioneer, because you got a lot of words coming at you in a little bit of time. So it might be difficult to understand the process or even what the auctioneer is saying. So for a new or beginner person, experience could be a disadvantage. Also, we talk about this like animal performance or shrink. Usually during transport, animals tend to be stressed or things like that, which causes shrink of the fat or the muscle. So you might be bidding on an animal that's X amount of weight, but by the time you get it home, it's a little bit less. So just keep that in mind, that there is shrink associated with animals who do or are transported. So if we have any questions during any of this time, feel free to throw it in the chat. Grace is monitoring that for me, and I can answer as we go. So those are kind of what I identified as some of the advantages and disadvantages. I'm sure there's plenty more on each side, but just as an intro kind of look at it, those are what I've identified as such. So then we have there's plenty of different definitions when it comes to livestock auctions. I'll do my best to give you as many as I know about, but they have things that are called regular sale auctions versus special sales. And again, those regular sales are held on that kind of regular interval, whatever it may be. And then in addition, they might have special sales that might be certain breeds, a certain farm, certain grouping. It's just something that is also helpful to marketing, or if you're looking for a very specific type of animal, like a bull sale or spring heifer sale. You never know what the special sale could be, but it might help you as either a bidder or a seller to identify those types of sales that the auction house is going to be representing. So where are these auctions near me? That's a great question. There are plenty of big ones down in Pennsylvania. One of the closest ones that we have is up in Unadilla in New York. I think I believe that's Delaware County. I think it's right on the top of Delaware County right there. So that is one that is a pretty large sale. They also have a horse sale as well. So they have a website, Facebook page, all these do. I encourage you to check them out, just see what it looks like, learn what the process for bidding, process for selling, what the different fees are potentially to kind of consign your animal through the livestock auction. And then of course there's Empire Livestock Auctions, which is a collective of several different auction barns up Finger Lakes, northern New York that way. So check these out. It's really neat to see what goes on, how much animals are going for. There's sales sheets as well. So I recommend checking it. So going into an auction, there is some homework to do if you're going to be, purchasing animals. You have to do your research ahead of time. I just pulled out a couple questions to kind of get your brain juices flowing. Um, Depending on what you are looking to purchase, um, or if you're going there to do some research ahead of time to see what is going through the auction, what the auction looks like. But if you're going there to buy, you're going to want to kind of think on some topics here, like what do you want to buy? I mean, that these all sound like simple questions, but if you're like me and once you get into the auction zone or area, you get excited. Your budget might feel a little looser. You might get excited when you're bidding, different things like that. So it's good to kind of like go in with a game plan ahead of time on what you want, see what's available and how they look. So figure out what kind of breed you're looking for, if that's something specific, or what your customers are looking for. Some customers prefer Angus over Hereford beef. Some folks prefer heritage breed chicken over broiler chickens, just different things like that. The species, do you have certain desired characteristics? Such as, are you looking for replacement heifers? Are you looking for, replacement anything really? So are you looking for certain mothering characteristics, height, stature, hips? What are you looking for? Age, is a great example of figuring out that particular question. Is, are you looking for calves, feeder pigs, bulls, first year heifers or first year cows, I guess, whatever the case may be. And you need to figure out what a healthy animal looks like. So you're going through the auction barn and you're doing kind of visual inspections. And I do have some body conditioning score sheets at the end here or in the next couple slides to kind of give you an idea of what conformation wise animals should look like. Because you don't want to buy animals that seem sickly. If you're buying them for meat, they should look like meat animals. If you're buying them for dairy, they should look like dairy animals. Different things like that. So I just pulled out a couple different body conditioning scores. This one's for cattle. So again, each animal has different ones. Keep in mind, this is for beef cattle here. If you're body conditioning scoring dairy cattle or dairy cows, these scorecards would look a lot different. So, you just have to do some research and learn what each animal should look like to the best of its conformation. So obviously, just like Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears, you don't want anything too thin or too fat. You want it just right, right? So you don't want any animals that are in, the 1, 2, or 3 body conditioning score, the best that you can gather. I mean, 3 is okay if they're a little younger. You have the opportunity to fatten them up, but what you're really going for here is for, on this scale, kind of a 4, where you can't see the ribs anymore. You might not be able to get to palpate the animal, so you have to visually kind of look at the hip bones to see that there's some fat on the back of that. We'll go into other things that healthy animals look like, but clear eyes, clear nose, but especially because these are going to be your meat animals, you want them to have meat characteristics. And again, you're looking for 4, 5, or 6 here in terms of scale. Anything else, they get pretty fat, and fat doesn't break down to meat. That's something that when you get them processed, it's usually cut off. So, you just want to make sure that what you're paying for is actually meat. And then in addition, animals who are overweight, if you're using them for breeding, they could have birthing issues because of the being overly fat. So just keep that in mind when you're purchasing. So really, you're going for the just right animal where they have a nice tail head. You're not seeing any ribs. They look beefy in that sense. We move on to sheep. Keep in mind, dairy sheep or goats will look a little bit different than meat sheep, meat goats. But in general, again, you don't want them too thin or too fat. You want them just right. So in this area, you're probably looking at somewhere between 3 or 4. So you'll learn what a good animal looks like and what your preference is as well. Pigs, of course, you want to look at the same thing. They want to look meaty, if not overly fat. And you're looking probably around a 3 or 4 in this sense. Okay, and there's plenty more body conditioning score cards available online, depending on which animal you like. So now you've done your research. You know what you want to look for in these animals. You've figured out a sale barn that you can go to. What are you going to bring to your auction? And some of these can be common sense, but sometimes these are some things that maybe you didn't expect to purchase an animal when you got there, or you don't have a trailer. But it's always good to have some kind of transportation back to your farm should you choose to purchase an animal or bid on an animal that day, or hook up with another farmer or a company that hauls animals or transports animals back to your farm. A lot of times the auction houses do have those folks available. So as long as you can kind of book some trailer space with them ahead of time and know how many you're planning on purchasing that day, they can kind of fill their trailer. So that's a couple options for you. Each auction house is a little bit different on how they kind of register you as a bidder. So it's always good ahead of time to either call the auction house or check out their website on how they accept payment, what do they need ahead of time, what do you need to bring, if there's what the fees are that the auction house takes out of the sale in order to facilitate the sale in itself. And it's always good if you can bring someone with you that may be more experienced, or a mentor if available, or you just learn as you go. So when you get there, it's common sense here, but you need to go over to the registration table, get your bidder number. You obviously need a bidder number to bid. Be careful when you get back to your seat or where you put that bidder number, because that number is associated to you. So any bids that get placed using that bidder number is your responsibility. So don't set it down. Make sure you keep a close eye on it. Again, understand those fees, and my one piece of advice is kind of make sure you're paying attention. And if you're someone who talks with their hands, don't be waving your bidder number around, because you'll be bidding on animals and you won't even know it. So just make sure you watch, listen, and learn as you go. There'll be a lot of different terminology that some of the auctioneers might use to describe the animals, and it might sound like slang, but you know, it's all common and uses to describe some of the animals. So once you're able to kind of go around to like the staging area or the preview area and see which animals you're going to be bidding on, you're looking at them visually to see their body conditioning score. You're making sure that they look healthy to the best of your knowledge. And you're going to make sure that you're following along to make sure you know which animal you're bidding on, or if it's an individual animal or the lot or group of animals. So another piece of advice would be when auction folks, or when the auctioneer is going, you know, beginning to throw out the first bids here, they usually start very high. So you want to wait a little bit till they start coming down. And then once somebody maybe with a little more experience starts the bid, then you can get in on it. But you know, just don't always go for the first thing that the auctioneer says, but you'll learn as experience goes, and you know, watch what they do. You can also be cautious of if some animals are going for, you know, extremely low prices, and it's not kind of in line with the market. Just watch out that of deals that can be seemingly too good to be true. You know, you might not have enough knowledge, or you might have missed something. Just keep that in mind. Now, also understanding the buying price. So depending on the auction house, or what the auctioneer is selling as, it can be by the pound, by the hundredweight, which is CWT, or by lot. So match that up with what your budget is, do some math, have a calculator. They're selling for $1 a pound or $1 a hundredweight, you know, or whatever the case may be. So just that's something to look out for. So once you purchase your animals and are bringing them back on the farm, I cannot stress enough, and I think we've pretty much talked biosecurity at almost every class, and an auction house is no different. In fact, it's one of the biggest places where biosecurity issues could happen. So it's super important that when you bring these new animals back onto your farm, to keep them separate from your herd or your flock or whatever it may be, in a separate location, separate pasture, for a minimum of 2 weeks, just to make sure that they haven't brought any you know, known diseases or worms or anything back onto the farm, or you don't want to spread any sickness onto the animals that you already have. So minimum 2 weeks, and it helps prevent spread of disease. It keeps the animals that you have healthy, and you know, keeps your new ones well, hopefully healthy, and prevents them from spreading anything to your healthy ones. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of highlights of things or ways that you might be thinking to buy as far as livestock here. So when you're thinking about buying, you have to figure out how many you want. Again, these are all questions, right? You know, are you looking for a single animal, a herd? You know, what can your property support? Make sure that the property that you have allows for these animals. You know, if you're not in a farming zone, you know, it's always just good to double check these things. Another thing to think about would be weight. You know, we only have so many grazing days in a year. And if you're trying to purchase calves to kind of sell them at a certain weight, you need to know how much you need to buy the calves at that time. So, you know, There's an example in here that I'll just kind of read through. But in general, your cattle are going to gain about 1.5 to 2 pounds per day. So with our grazing season, if you buy these calves at, 270 to 360 pounds on that 180 day grazing cycle at 2 pounds a day, when those calves leave the pasture, they're probably going to be 800 to 900 pounds. So, you are working back on a timeline as far as the weight that you want. So depending on what you want to sell or when you need meat by, these are kind of things you have to do some math and think back on. So, or do your best, if you don't want to be raising or feeding animals through the winter, you might want animals who are a little bit heavier. If you don't care about that, then there's plenty of different options in terms of purchasing animals. Of course, size, you have medium frame breeds, large frame breeds. These are all up to you. Breed, some breeds have premiums, such as like the Angus in an auction. If you're selling or buying, if you're selling, you can get some premiums in addition to the bidding price. And some other breeds are discounted that aren't as popular per se. Think about what gender you want to grow or what you want to buy. Feeders or breeders, they say, the different muscling options. If you want cows with horns, there are kind of different premiums for polled or dehorned cattle. One thing I will mention is check with your processor if they care whether or not the animal has horns. Some processors, they don't take horn cattle. Or, if you have like a Texas Longhorn cattle, which I have seen a bunch around here, or some of those really large horned animals, some processors just can't, it just doesn't work for them. So just ask away. Age of the animal, if you're buying young animals, older animals, think about that. What type of health management or vaccinations do you want to have these animals have, basically? Are they vaccinated with a veterinary inspection? And any condition of the animal, how do they look? Are they covered in manure or, mud? Sometimes if you're purchasing these animals, you might get a discount because of that. Or if you're selling them, they might be discounted. So visual inspection of your animal is, again, very important. You're doing the best you can visually with the knowledge that you have. So you want to make sure that everything looks good on the animal. The eyes, they're bright and clear, no pus, no pink eye, no discharge. The nose, they're not all snotty. There's not a lot of mucus. It looks clear and wet. Breathing, the best that you can. And I understand that you're not, right up next to these animals, but if you feel that the area is, cool and not over hot, then these animals shouldn't be panting. They shouldn't be coughing, things like that. So you want to take a good look at that. The gender of the animals. So make sure that if you're trying to buy some animals to breed, then they should be female. Or if you're looking for bulls, make sure they have both descended testicles, things like that. General conformation of animals. When you're looking for meat, more often than not, male animals should look masculine, females should look feminine. as far as that goes, is breeding ability. The coat of the animal should look okay, should look smooth. Again, you don't want to see like bald spots or any sign of disease or parasite or, ringworm, things like that. If you're looking for a dairy animal, you want to take a peek at their udder to make sure that they have, either for a cow, all four quadrants look okay. You don't have any dead udders, things like that. And of course, body and disposition is something that can make a good animal. So, because you'll be with these animals all the time, so you generally don't want a crazy cow or a crazy goat. That can get hairy there. So some of the questions that I do get through auctions, since it depends, we like New Holland, that one down in Middleburg in Pennsylvania, what do you have to do in order to get your animals back into New York? So usually with import or export of animals, they have to have a certificate of veterinary inspection and in order to go across state lines. So make sure that the animal does have that and has identification and meets any of the testing requirements for disease before going across these state lines. So usually the auctioneer or auction house will be able to let you know what exactly is needed depending on the state that you live in. But it's just good to keep that in mind, whether you're bringing animal into another state or taking animals back from another state. So in case you are interested, there is 4-H livestock auctions going on at our local fairs. In fact, we have one on Saturday over in Ulster County at the New Paltz, the fairgrounds over in New Paltz. And my county, Sullivan County, will have one at the Grahamsville Fairgrounds on Sunday, August 21st. So this is awesome. The 4-H youth has spent the last year raising up their animals to prepare them for the 4-H livestock auction. So there you'll be able to see kind of what the bidding process is like. They have auctioneers, what it's going for. And it's a really cool opportunity to see the end result of these kids' hard work. So if you're interested in any of those, it'd be neat for you to attend. So I know I had a lot of information going on, but I just wanted to touch on a little bit of auction stuff. I encourage you to check out the videos, check out the local auctions. Again, one of the closer one is the one in Unadilla. Check out their website, Facebook. It's pretty exciting. And I hope that you're able to find what you were looking for, because an auction is an excellent place to purchase animals and an even better place to sell animals with built-in marketing. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I will stop recording now and then see if there's any questions.